And Rick, just let us know when we are live. So we don't. Excellent. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. This is a regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Montclair and is being broadcast live on Channel 34 and is streaming live on the Montclair TV 34 YouTube channel. It is available on demand and can and will be rebroadcast. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councillor Cummings? Deputy Mayor Hurlock?
Present.
Councillor Price Abrams?
Present.
Councillor Russo?
Present.
Councillor Schlager?
Here.
Councillor Yacobelis?
Present.
Mayor Spiller?
Present. Thank you very much. And so we have our agenda in front of us with a number of our consent agenda items. And before we open up the public comment and proclamations, which is the order usually do things, I will first use the opportunity as on our agenda to offer our State of the Township address. So thank you very much. My fellow Montclair residents, it is a great honor to address you this evening on the state of our township. While I would like nothing more than to be spending tonight talking about the roads that we've paved, the miles of water and sewer lines that we've replaced, or the AAA bond rating, which saves residents millions in tax dollars and provides dollars we invest in our township, this year is a year like no other. So we need to discuss the impact of COVID-19. And I need to take a moment to address the events of the past several weeks. On January 6th, we witnessed something that many of us never thought we would experience on American soil. In an abject cowardice move and in betrayal to his oath of office, Donald Trump and his allies orchestrated a failed but deadly insurrection in an attempt to overturn a free and fair election. While our democracy is often imperfect, it is sacred. We must protect and nurture it. We cannot let those who wish to tear it down in the pursuit of power and oppression succeed. We must hold them accountable. I thank our representatives in the House, Mikey Sherrill and Donald Payne, and our senators, Bob Menendez and Cory Booker, for remaining steadfast. While the events of the past 2 weeks are still fresh, we're also still facing an unprecedented public health and economic crisis, the likes of which we have never seen before. The coronavirus pandemic has upended virtually every aspect of our lives and our society. Restaurants and small businesses, which form the heart of our downtown, have been ravaged. Many have been forced to close their doors. Some will never open. Our world-class public schools have moved to remote learning since March. Our children have had to adapt to a new normal, socially and emotionally. Healthcare professionals and frontline essential workers have answered the call, working tirelessly day and night, putting their own safety at risk to serve and protect us all. Our residents have endured economic hardship, from reduced income to complete unemployment. The social connections we depend on have also been affected. Our seniors are vulnerable and, in the name of safety, isolated. Our family connections have been strained, with elderly parents unable to visit with their children. We know that often families have been unable to visit loved ones in hospitals and long-term care facilities. Friends, neighbors, and children are now meeting over Zoom instead of in person. Most of all, the pandemic has been measured in lives lost. Tragically, 62 of our fellow Montclair residents have succumbed to COVID-19. Their loss is deeply felt. In the face of this unimaginable challenge, Montclair has responded with strength, caring, and resilience for which our community is known. It is from our community's response that I draw deep optimism that together we will manage and get through this crisis. We are relying on each other like never before, and we can and we will emerge stronger. Montclair has revealed itself to be the very best of what we aspire to be. I am encouraged by our local nonprofits like Tony's Kitchen, headed by the incomparable Ann Mernon, who expanded their mission and helped more people than ever before. I'm encouraged by our educators and parents and students who adapted to remote learning and continued to support a first-class public education for our students. I'm encouraged by our institutions of faith who stepped into spaces of need to help with social supports for those most vulnerable. Of course, our local government, in coordination with our partners at the county and state level, including Governor Phil Murphy, worked to address this pandemic head-on. We instituted virus testing and tracing and coordinated with local healthcare providers, thankfully leading to the recovery of 1,320 Montclair residents and the limiting of the virus spreading to countless others. We increased funding for critical services and local organizations. We provided more than $150,000 in direct grants to hard-hit businesses throughout Montclair. Coming together, looking out for one another, putting the needs of community before our own. That's what the Montclair ideal is all about. I could not be more proud of our township, or more honored to be entrusted to serve as your mayor. After more than 10 months of enduring the single greatest public health and economic crisis of our lifetimes, after experiencing challenge after challenge, our spirit remains unbroken. Our values remain intact. The state of our township is strong. However, the crisis is far from over. But now, thanks to amazing efforts of scientists and healthcare professionals, a safe and effective vaccine is here. Ensuring the urgent and expedited distribution of the vaccine is job number one for all levels of government. And thankfully, with the new administration headed by President Joseph R. Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris taking office tomorrow, I have every expectation that will happen. Essex County has already commenced a robust vaccination program, starting with healthcare workers and vulnerable populations. Our county executive, Joe DiVincenzo, and Commissioner Brendan Gill have been instrumental in making Essex County among the most prepared in the state. By all accounts, the vaccination process is smooth and painless and an example of solid planning. To date, almost 800 Montclair residents have been vaccinated, with the county goal of being able to provide 30,000 vaccinations per week through all the county sites. Of course, we will need additional vaccination supplies from the federal government, and we will continue to support and press for that to happen as soon as possible. As mayor, I'm committed to working with our partners at the county, state, and federal level to ensure we do everything that we can to defeat this pandemic once and for all. One of the key steps we've taken at the township level is the formation of the mayor's COVID-19 Recovery Task Force. The task force has been given the charge of identifying needs within our community, liaising with local businesses and nonprofit organizations, as well as reviewing the whole of government response to this public health crisis. I've appointed Montclair residents David Pesquerel and Shante Palmer to co-chair the task force. I thank them for their dedication to Montclair. They, along with nearly 24 other talented and dedicated volunteers, have hit the ground running. They have successfully pushed the Department of Community Affairs to modify guidance around winter tents for our restaurants. They have created information sharing networks to provide information on available grants. They have surveyed our nonprofits and small businesses to understand their needs and much more. I look forward to their continued efforts and recommendations. The last year has shown us that our township is not an island unto itself, but instead we are tied to a shared destiny with our neighbors across the state and country. The actions of the state and federal government impact our lives, and in turn, the actions we take locally have an impact far beyond our borders. In fact, communities throughout New Jersey look to Montclair as an example of what progressive, forward-thinking local government is capable of. Now, over the last 4 years, the administration in the White House has been nothing short of a failure of leadership, a failure of collaboration, and worst of all, a failure of conscience. Beyond the divisive rhetoric, there have been federal policies and executive actions that have actively and senselessly caused harm, but we have pushed back. When Donald Trump used the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, commonly known as ICE, to intimidate communities like Montclair, we responded. By passing a resolution to make Montclair a welcoming community, we sent a clear message to DC that no person is illegal and Montclair will not be bullied. Similarly, when the new conservative majority on the Supreme Court indicated that a woman's right to choose was in question, Montclair pushed back. I was proud to join Governor Murphy, legislative leaders, and reproductive right advocates to support the Reproductive Freedom Act, which declared in no uncertain terms that a woman's right to choose is hers and hers alone. I'm grateful to so many in our community who joined that effort. In particular, my council colleague, Lori Price Abrams, and Montclair residents Marcia Marley of Blue Wave, New Jersey, and Erin Chung of Women for Progress. Additionally, Councilwoman Price Abrams has developed a resolution in support of that effort. Thank you all for standing up. Another initiative that I'm particularly proud of is the enactment of the first ever common sense rent control ordinance in the history of Montclair. Diversity is a part of what makes Montclair such a special place to live, work, and raise a family. And it's no secret that our community is a desirable place to live for just that reason. While we have worked hard over the last 8 years with great focus from Deputy Mayor Herlock on reducing our debt by over $60 million, thereby limiting tax increases for residents and maintaining affordability, left unfettered, rising rents threaten to diminish the very diversity that we cherish. If Montclair becomes an enclave only for the wealthy, we will lose part of what makes our community so special. That's why I stood together with local advocates, the tenants organization of Montclair, and my council colleagues to pass the first of its kind ordinance. Reasonable, common sense rent control regulations are long overdue. I'm proud to have helped lead the efforts to finally make sure tenants are protected. I want to thank Deputy Mayor Bill Herlock and also longtime advocate around this issue, Councilman at Large Bob Russo, for their steadfast commitment to this critical item. At the core of our diversity is the recognition that we are all one, but we also have different needs. The coronavirus has impacted every community, but we know that minority and lower income communities have been particularly affected. Recognizing this need, the Township partnered with the Neighborhood Development Corporation and the Montclair Fund for Educational Excellence to establish the Montclair Community Enrichment Center, which has helped students and families better manage the challenges posed by remote learning. Neighborhood Development Corporation Executive Director Al Pella and my council colleague David Cummings were the driving forces behind this effort. Thank you, Al and David. This past year also saw the realization of some projects that have been in the work for quite some time. We were able to open a new skate park by repurposing part of Rand tennis courts. Our high school students and other youth were able to push for a skate park that provides young people a dedicated place to meet, play, and try out some new tricks. Especially in this year when indoor activities have all been impossible, the outdoor skate park has been a much needed respite, an opportunity for exercise. Councilwoman Schlager was a tireless advocate for the skate park, as she is for so many important issues. Her advocacy, along with the work of our N.J.S.A skating club and Skate Essex, helped to bring this project to fruition. Thank you. Also, I must acknowledge one of our newest council members, Peter Yacobelis. Although relatively new to Montclair, Peter has jumped right in, offering thoughtful input and robust engagement with constituents. He helped lead the Shop Local campaign that the council put forward to assist local businesses during this difficult time. I also thank you. In the coming weeks and months, I will continue to provide updates on local government and in particularly the progress we see around vaccination efforts and availability. If you are interested in more of the exact figures and statistics of our town in regard to COVID-19, these videos will provide you such. These video updates will be available on the town website and social media channels, as well as Sean M. Spiller on Facebook and YouTube. The coronavirus pandemic has exposed many longstanding weaknesses in our society. Persistent economic inequality, disparate access to healthcare, and deficient infrastructure support are systemic challenges we can no longer afford to ignore. As we begin to recover from the pandemic, we must seek to replace Band-Aids and short-term fixes with long-lasting, sustainable solutions. Local government will have a pivotal role, not only in recovery, but building back better. We need smarter and more efficient investment in infrastructure by the federal government here in Montclair to supplement the work we have done. We need more creative public policy around equal access to economic opportunity. We need more compassionate, human-centered government overall. And we need to do all of this while continuing to make Montclair even more financially sustainable. Generational change and progress start with the seeds that are planted at the local level. We in Montclair are up for the challenge. We are committed to creating a better tomorrow. As you have heard me say many times before, Montclair is more than just a place. It's an ideal. Preserving that ideal in our hearts, in our actions, and in our local government is our collective mission. And it is my promise to you as your mayor. Thank you. And may God bless Montclair and the United States of America. Thank you very much. I see the thumbs and the applause, so I appreciate that. And with that, I would like to move to our proclamations. The first one is a proclamation thanking the Lions Club of Livingston and the New Jersey Indian Lions Club. And our Deputy Mayor Herlock, would you please do the honors?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well done. And I'm proud to read this proclamation thanking the Livingston Lions Club and the New Jersey Indian Lions Club for their service to the Montclair community. Whereas the Lions Club has supported the efforts of more than 1.4 million members Embedded in communities across 200 countries for over 100 years, Lions Club members empower volunteers to serve the community and meet humanitarian needs. And whereas the New Jersey Indian Lions Club, led by Mr. and Mrs. Harish and Hansa Mehta, was founded 20 years ago with the intention of performing humanitarian service in all counties of New Jersey. And whereas New Jersey Lions Northern District Governor Nalit Patel of the Livingston Lions Club has encouraged members of the district to support each other and the community with compassion, courage, and kindness, and service during the year of extraordinary need. And whereas one of the main global causes of the Lions Club is to ensure all community members have access to nutritious foods, the Livingston Lions Club and the New Jersey Indian Lions Club assisted in responding to local food insecurity by facilitating the distribution of 1,000 boxes of food at the Charles H. Bullock School this past November 28th. Thank you. And whereas the Livingston Lions Club and New Jersey Indian Lions Club collaborated with civic organizations, social clubs, law enforcement, and fraternities from the Montclair community to achieve their distribution goal, and whereas this act of service was a great cumulative effort and serves as an exemplar of impactful action for the needs of the community. Now for the mayor and the council of the Township of Montclair, hereby extend our appreciation to the Livingston Lions Club and the New Jersey Indian Lions Club for their service in the Township of Montclair. And I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. I second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Next,
Mr. Mayor,
sorry.
I just want to say something.
Please,
The
yes.
Lions Clubs, I was a member of the Lions Club from the years I worked in Newark, and I was a member of the Lions Club in Belleville when I worked in Belleville, and I was active with the Lions Club with Adrian O'Toole in Montclair. I just want to say thank you to the Lions Club through Councilor and Deputy Mayor Hurlock, because the Lions Club deals mostly with sight problems. They're always helping people who have sight issues, and I've always had problems, glaucoma, eyesight issues. And I want to thank the Lions Club members all over for doing such good work to help people have sight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have a proclamation recognizing an eighth grader who's just doing some amazing things. Councilman Cummings, would you do the honors? I know you, were instrumental in helping with this. Would you mind reading the proclamation?
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to say that this student's achievements is really an example of what happens in the Montclair public school system. I know that at former Mount Heber, now Buzz, they put Dan Taylor, science teacher, in charge of their as their STEM program. And in the years that he's been in charge, they have really stepped up in efforts and work in that area. And so I think it's just great. And this is an example of that. So I really look forward to reading this. Recognizing Isla Gladstone for her achievements. Whereas the Township of Montclair is a leader on environmental issues and sustainability, having been on the forefront of recycling mandates, compost cycling, and education, electric vehicle infrastructure, and the locally sourced food movement. Recognize the importance of collaboration in these efforts. Montclair helped to create the Sustainable Jersey program and participates in the Sustainable Essex Alliance Energy Procurement Cooperative. Montclair has been recognized for its environmental leadership, both nationally and regionally, having been named a Climate Showcase Community by the U.S. EPA and receiving the Clean Energy Leadership Award by the Office of Clean Energy and New Jersey's Board of Public Utilities. And whereas we have the next generation of environmental leaders already making their mark today, including Buzz Aldrin Middle School 8th grader Isla Gladstone. Isla is a member of the local Project CS Girls Chapter, a national nonprofit dedicated to closing the tech gender gap by running a national computer science competition for middle school girls and workshops around the country. Members of the club work to identify and research an area in need of change and utilize their knowledge in computer science to build a creative solution. And whereas Isla's work was so outstanding that she was named as one of the nation's 35 finalists in the 2020 Project CS Girls competition. And whereas for her competition project, Isla combined her interest in computer science and climate science to create an app called Waste Watchers that weighs, tracks, and compares a household's weekly recycling output. Isla recognized that making an effort to recycle is no longer enough, as heavier materials such as glass require more resources to haul. Her app encourages households to reduce their consumption of all packaged goods, recyclable or not. And whereas this was not Isla's first effort to utilize her coding skills for the betterment of the community. For her previous project, CS Girl Submission, Isla created a prototype of a website that connected food banks with local food providers to request needed items and reduce food waste. Now, therefore, the mayor and council of the Township Montclair hereby extend our congratulations to Isla Gladstone for her innovation and wish her the best in her future endeavors. And I so move.
Second.
Excellent.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? It is really just great to see when I'm sure maybe some of you, when I think back to 8th grade, what I was doing, and then we hear these things, it's just truly amazing. So thank you, Councilman Cummings, and really wonderful to hear the great things happening. So by our young students. Excellent. Next, we have, next we have a proclamation congratulating the Montclair Neighborhood Development Corporation on its 50th anniversary. Councilwoman Schlager, could I ask you to do the honors and read that?
Yes, absolutely, Mayor. Thank you. This is a proclamation congratulating the Montclair Neighborhood Development Corporation on its 50th anniversary. Whereas the Montclair Neighborhood Development Corporation, MNDC, is a community-based nonprofit organization based in Montclair. It was founded in 1969 and incorporated on June 1st, 1970 by a group of concerned citizens and community activists whose goal was to empower and support vulnerable individuals and families in various Montclair neighborhoods. And whereas the Montclair Neighborhood Development Corporation's continued mission is to empower and support disadvantaged individuals, youth, and families to achieve an improved quality of life through training, education, and advocacy. It achieves this mission by providing an impactful range of programs that assist youth and adult residents of the community, including veteran services, senior corner, Latino services, homeless services, continuing education, Project Oasis, the Career Development Institute, and the Culinary Career Institute. And whereas the Montclair Neighborhood Development Corporation supports the Township of Montclair's goals of providing a summer youth employment program that productively engages low and moderate income youth over the summer, introducing them and preparing them for the world of work. The program connects young residents from the region with nonprofits throughout Montclair for their summer employment, providing meaningful work and life experiences that help build a strong foundation for their futures. Participants receive training in areas such as customer service, interviewing, business attire appropriateness, employer expectations, and office etiquette. They also participate in ongoing character building sessions, academic enhancement class instruction, and financial literacy classes. And whereas over the past 50 years, the Montclair Neighborhood Development Corporation has supported the residents of Montclair in myriad ways through their services and community building. And now, therefore, the mayor and council of the Township of Montclair congratulate the Montclair Neighborhood Development Corporation on the occasion of their 50th anniversary, commend the significant contributions they've made to Montclair's community life, and extend best wishes and continued success in the years that lie ahead. And I so move.
Excellent. Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you so much, and we certainly commend them for the work that they continue to do. Congratulations on the milestone. And next, in an effort to minimize exposure to COVID-19 and to maintain social distancing practices, this January 19th, 2021 Township Council meeting and further meetings until the pandemic is over will be available to the public remotely. Those who wish to participate now during public comment should dial into 408-418-9388 When asked to enter an access code, please enter 179-410-0593 and then press pound. When asked to enter an attendee number, please simply press pound. When asked, please state your name and then press pound. The administrator will say when it is your turn to call, and the caller will hear 2 beeps. At that time, the caller will have an opportunity to make his or her comment. And Mr. Stafford, I will turn it over to you and Mr. Fan to work through the public comment process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. The first caller is the caller with the number starting with 201-696. It is your turn to comment. 201-696. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comment under 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ken O'Brien. Mr. Mayor, I was quite happy to hear your comments as you started the meeting about the need to protect democracy in Washington. And while I don't know if we agree on everything, we definitely agree on that. And I think with that, I'm calling tonight and adding my comments to the record to voice a severe question to this group about the practice of democracy as it relates to the petition for the Montclair Property Owner Association petition. And so I guess I've not met some of you. I've met some people on this council. I'm not very active in politics, but I went on the app and I signed it twice. And 2 times I've now come to learn I've been rejected. And so I guess I have some questions with that, in that certainly a lot of times my signature has been known to people in this town. I pay my taxes by check each quarter. You've seen that. The police chief has just certified my signature, as has the state police. I've testified in front of numerous congressional testimonies. I've been in front of the USTR. I have a security background. My name, I'm a resident. My phone number's there. I happen to chair the board of a really large not-for-profit. I've traveled with one of you to Trenton to go lobby in front of some of our most senior politicians about really important things. And yet somehow, my signature couldn't be read twice. And I would challenge this group to say that democracy is, while imperfect, it can be made better if we're heard. And so to pass an ordinance when there was a petition so close and to say that my signature was not okay, I find that challenging. Not that the ordinance should pass or not pass. I'm not here to judge that. I think that was an issue that, frankly, the voters had a piece. And I know we may agree or disagree. Frankly, you might be surprised. We maybe agree more than you think on this. But I do think it should have been put forward in referendum. And I think really the numbers say it probably was pretty darn close. And so as we go into this world of remote voting and COVID-19 and learning how to adapt to this new norm, I think this group has to look at the next time this comes up and say, how possibly could someone in the town with their signature not have been able to be validated, not once, but twice, and find a process improvement, certainly for going forward. And I would actually challenge this group to reverse their decision and let that vote go a 3rd time, redo the signature with the right policy. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 973. I beg your pardon, 862-262. It is your turn to comment. 862-262. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Annalie Sherfin, and I'm a member of Montclair Beyond Policing and a resident of Montclair. I know I'm not alone when I say it's time for us to reimagine public safety by reprioritizing our budget to better reflect our values and invest in true public safety. I applaud the town for opening the Montclair Community Enrichment Center and would love to see an expansion of this program, and I propose that a portion of the $16 million police department budget could be reallocated in 2021 to help even more families. Now, in 2019, New Jersey Advanced Media's report on use of force states that a Black person was 490% more likely to have force used on them than a white person between 2012 and 2016. These numbers may or may not reflect interactions between residents of Montclair and police, but I encourage everyone to visit force.nj.com to see for themselves. And this summer, the Pressman Social Action interns researched use of force reports from Montclair between 2017 and mid-2020 and found that a Black person is about 300% more likely to have force used on them than a white person in Montclair in that time period. Additionally, 1/3 of use of force incidents during that time were in response to mental health episodes, and of those, 78% of those involved Black people. So there's damning evidence of a racial disparity with police use of force, even if residents are not speaking out against it, and even if the chief of police says it is not happening. Now, given that a significant amount of use of force incidents are in response to mental health crises, I have one question tonight because I don't believe it has been answered. Has the Public Safety Committee looked into a program similar to Cahoots, a community-based public safety system that provides mental health first response for crises involving mental illness, homelessness, and addiction by trained people without guns? This is just one program that could run at a small fraction of the $16 million Montclair Police Department budget and could be carved out of the police budget so that our progressive town could reflect more fully our values as a society and provide true public safety. So has such a program been investigated by the committee or the town council? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. And while we usually answer some of these questions at the end, I will say I will open to the Public Safety Committee. If I know that all three of the members have been compiling much data, attending many different workshops, looking at a lot of different pieces. So I'll just offer the floor if anyone from the Public Safety Committee would care to offer any insights.
And Mayor, I'll respond initially and say that no, we have not. What we have done is had conversations with the chief and deputy mayor about looking into the different type of ways to look into this issue. So at this point, the answer is no, but that's also part as we are in the budget process of looking into how we will allocate funds. Chief has been very open into having these discussions. And I think, again, I go back to one of the areas of concern here is how do we move forward without a true community involvement in conversations in which Zoom calls really don't do a lot, because I think there's been some question about the New Jersey Force Report, particularly the initial one that the conversation started about. So I will also say that I think, and I don't know if I'm speaking for Council Hurlock or Council Russo, and that these robust conversations with Chief Conforti have indicated his open-mindedness to looking into this, but also his concern that what he's come up with is that when the police are called to involvement, they found it more likely that people are happy that the police are there because they really don't want to go into a mental health situation without that type of protection. So I think this is a conversation that we will continue to have. But to answer the question that was presented to us, no, that has not been a part of our discussion to come up with a group to talk to, but it has been something that we've been talking to the chief about to come to us with some ideas that he thinks can move us in that direction.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Stafford.
Caller with the number starting 973-655. It is your turn to comment. 973-655. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Jill Wadnick. I'm a resident of the 4th Ward and a longtime community member in Montclair, and really appreciate Mayor Spiller's vision and response, and the previous callers during public comment, the accommodations to the community groups and the student, all really have set the tone for the type of town that Montclair is. And what I continued to hear during Mayor Spiller's remarks was that Montclair is looked to be a progressive community with sustainable solutions, common sense, reasonable regulations. It's so easy for me then to share that I'm calling to center that we have a unique opportunity to do a common sense regulation that would support community health and well-being and climate justice. My understanding is that there's an opportunity to expand regulation in a small capacity for gas-powered leaf blowers. To me, this seems like low-hanging fruit. We understand that there's a strong community threat, and that strengthening the regulations on leaf blowers may seem an odd use of our community's time and regulatory mechanisms, and yet climate change is an urgent threat to women's health. Chip Blake said people used to believe that environmental issues could be held separate from issues of justice, race, gender, sexual orientation, equity, and peace. These days are finally and thankfully over, but it will take a great deal of imagination to understand how to continue to bring all these conversations under one roof. I believe that our mayor started this conversation referencing the Reproductive Freedom Act, referencing the skate park, referencing rent control, all of these elements that strengthen the experience of living and thriving in Montclair. I'm calling tonight, and I've never called before, to simply ask you to do the low-hanging fruit of supporting greater regulations for gas-powered leaf blowers. It's science climate, and we can make a change in Montclair. Thanks for hearing me, and thanks for all you're doing in the council.
Thank you.
Caller with the number starting 973-738. It is your turn to comment. 973-738. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Caleb Levine, and I'm a junior at M.H.S. I'm affiliated with Montclair Beyond Policing and the Prophetic Council. West Orange employs 20 police officers per 10,000 residents. Clifton employs 17 police officers per 10,000 residents. Teaneck 21, Wayne 20, Ridgewood 17, and Montclair employs 27 police officers per 10,000 residents. We are a regional aberration. $16 million annually are spent on our overinflated police department, while surrounding towns like the one I mentioned maintain equivalent crime rates with many fewer officers. So where is our money going? How are these surrounding towns able to keep their communities as safe and often safer than ours with many fewer officers? Of course, our police do much good in our town, but surely dedicating resources to homelessness, education, and COVID rent and small business relief would all be preferable to superfluous police officers. I'd respectfully like to ask the council to explain this disparity in spending. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 917-882. It is your turn to comment. 917-882. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comment under 3 minutes.
Yes, hello. My name is Mark DiBenedetto. I've been a resident in the First Ward for 26 years. I'm calling this evening to express my support for any effort to reduce the use of gas-powered leaf blowers in Montclair. Over the time I've lived here, the noise from these machines has gotten worse and worse. What seems like a consistent noise disruption disrupts many of our family activities, including meals, quiet time for reading, and also work activities like conference calls and Zoom calls. This noise has reduced our ability to enjoy living in our neighborhood and is demoralizing. We feel prisoners to the sound and fearful of the pollution, as I've begun to learn about how bad gas leaf blowers are in terms of pollution, the environment, and health, because of their two-stroke engine. The more I read, the more shocked I get about the amount of toxic pollutions that are being spewed out into our residential neighborhoods virtually every day, from the beginning of spring all the way through the end of fall. I don't want this kind of pollution to be happening in my neighborhood, especially when there are more modern tools available to do the same job that even cost less to operate and maintain. I also want to recognize that the people who are getting the worst of it are the landscapers who have to breathe in these fumes all day long, get sprayed with the exhaust, and face hearing loss from the extreme noise. When we know that safer equipment is available, how do we justify not taking immediate steps to move in that direction? Finally, we have to enforce the law. There are violations and they cause real damage. A neighbor of mine was telling me an anecdote where he did file a complaint and he felt the onus and the responsibility was on him through the arduous process of filling in the application for the complaint and then having to show up in court for it. It seems as if this is a pretty straightforward issue, and I do know that your last meeting, there was conversation about some curtailment. I read about it in the Montclair Local and on some of the websites, and I just want to implore and encourage all of you to realize that some of the reason why Montclair has been so attractive is that people can come together over some very big issues like the mayor has spoken about, but also some that really affect the very thread of the fabric of our lives, the peace and serenity of living in a town where sometimes you can enjoy some quiet time to yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 917-536. It is your turn to comment. 917-536. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
This is June Regner. I live in Montclair. The words that Mayor Spiller spoke at the beginning of the meeting about the failed but deadly insurrection and the people who participated must be held accountable were wonderful. But I would like to know what Montclair is doing to make sure that no Montclair municipal employees actually were taking part in this. Many other municipalities and cities are monitoring their employees' social media. Most recently, several firefighters from New York City were held accountable. I think that Montclair should be able to do just as well. Are these real words? Are they going to create real actions or not? A little further in, Mayor Spiller talked about parents and educators who support a first-class education. For many, many families, remote learning is not a first-class education. Remote learning is causing a lot of suffering and pain. There are many studies that show it is substantially widening our already unacceptable achievement gap. Mayor Spiller stepped in a few months ago to keep students and teachers out of the schools. Do you have any plans to help get students whose families want their children to be in in-person setting back in the building? You are in a unique position to actually be helpful. It would be wonderful if you could remember that we are your constituents. Thank you.
Thank you.
And, I'll just note, I never forget, but thank you very much. And just not sure what you mean by stepped in, and that obviously the purview of the schools are theirs, but certainly we as in the township side, and I think has been obviously borne out by our actions, are here to support in any way we can to the efforts and the work that they're doing. But thank you, Mr. Stafford.
Caller with the number starting 973-820. It is your turn to comment. 973-820. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Town Manager, members of the council, and special shout out to Mr. Karasik, the town attorney. I want to acknowledge the terrific fight you put up in court on behalf of our rent control ordinance that was adopted last April and is now in effect due to your good work. Always appreciate it when you guys get the people's business done. Montclair is now a more just place because we will have regulation of rents. I would also like to say that this means now it's time to build a very muscular rent board and rent regulatory process. I hope that you have high on your agenda plans to find and appoint strong members, both landlords and tenants, to a rent board. I want to let you know, I think I've told you before, that our friends in Verona who have rent control and have had for decades, we discovered that their rent control commission had not met in 6 years at one point. And it took aggrieved tenants to get that back in order. I would also like to say on another subject that I did appreciate the even tone of Mr. O'Brien, who called in earlier. It's been a long, hard fight on this issue, and so much of the rhetoric got out of hand. I'm not looking forward to hearing from the Montclair Property Owner Association representatives in the future, although they have vowed to continue contesting our rent control ordinance. They simply used derogatory and inflated rhetoric way too often. I guess that's it. Thank you so much this evening.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 973-816. It is your turn to comment. 973-816, please. State your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Trevor Hetrich, Montclair resident and also member of Montclair Beyond Policing. First off, Mr. Spiller, that was a great speech. I'd like to thank you for that. It was very well put. I'd also like to congratulate the town on the recent rent control win that they had. And also, again, thank you guys for fighting so hard for it. So last meeting, Councilman Russo just responded to one of our members about her call to defund the police, and just restating some talked about concepts. He specifically said, I took the quote, you can't defund the police if you're going to have to pay for if you're going to have to pay the money for body cams. He also mentioned that it was he was talking about the recent body cam legislature that was passed back in November, late November, early December. He mentioned that it was unfunded, things like that. First off, Councilman Russo, I'd like to thank you for your response. I had done some research into it, and I'm sure you've talked with and in some committees by now, but Bill A4907, which was a funding bill joint with A4312 and S1163, says that they are allocating $58 million to deploy the equipment. In the bill itself, it says, or at least from the financial office, the estimate apparently included equipment acquisition, annual licensing fees, maintenance and storage. Funds are also being incurred annually as well. This is all supposed to be coming from the general fund. On the state legislature website, it also states that the cost of the body-worn cameras vary, that the cost includes not only the one-time purchase of equipment, but also includes maintenance, data storage, oversight, and replacement due to wear and tear. S1163 corroborates this. I could obviously be misunderstanding this, but it does seem like the costs are going to be covered by the state through grants from the general fund. This doesn't seem like it's going to be putting any dent in the budget. And I'd just like to yield my time in case anybody would like to respond. But if not, that's all from me. I thank you again, and I wish you all good health and safety. Have a great night.
Mr. Mayor, can I respond?
Please, Councilman Russo.
Yeah, how are you again, young man? I teach political science at Montclair State, and one of the things that our class always discusses is the legislation passed in 1976 called the IDEA Act. I don't know if you know what that is. It's Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The federal government promised to fund 40% of the costs for special education, and for the last 44 years, they've never given more than 12%. That's why our taxes are so high. That's why our school costs are so high. 1/4 of our school costs goes to special ed. We've never gotten the federal funding that they promised. I teach my students, and they've researched it. It's a total promise with a fraudulent failure by the federal government to fund. Now, our state government is different, and our governor is different. If he says he's going to fund it, I trust Governor Murphy. If the legislature says they're going to fund something, I trust them. But the experience we've had in the past is that when these mandates are passed, and we call them unfunded mandates or partially funded mandates, or sometimes there'll be a mandate which decreases in funding over the years. We cannot count on that funding absolutely to come through with the pandemic, the crisis with our funding. Of course, the federal government may be helpful now under President Biden. So I'm hopeful we will get funding for these things. But my concept in saying that to you was that I've had experience, and we've learned from the past that we just can't count on funding from the state or federal government when it's promised, even if it's in legislation. They just may not do it. With the concept of defunding, why I say that is because if we do have to pay something, even some portion of the costs, and actually even without that bill, the funding of purchasing the cameras is supposed to come from the county prosecutor's office. We got assurances that they have resources for us to purchase initially the cameras. I'm in favor of body cams. But a lot of students have said to me, well, we don't want any more equipment because that's more policing. Well, we've either got to have them or not. It's either the surveillance that protects police as well as the citizens or not. I'm in favor of it. I do want to see the cost absorbed by the federal and state government. And I want to see national laws passed that will help us with policing reform. But I do not like when people just say defund and then they also say fund with something else. Now, if we get the money from somewhere else, that's still more money being spent on policing. So I just have a problem with that concept. Refunding or shifting funding or moving the money to things like mental health and education and trying to help those who are in need. That's something I want to see more social services funded. But I just don't like that phrase. I have to tell you, I'm a very progressive councilman, but that phrase used over and over around the country actually caused the problems of many Congress people losing their elections, like Amy Kennedy in Atlantic County. They just put flyers up and put ads up on TV showing burning police cars and defund the police. She had nothing to do with that, yet she was defeated because of those terrible phrases being used that really, really hurt. So we want to maybe refund things and get the funding from the federal and state government, but please don't count on that. Just learn from my experience. Don't count on that. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Caller with the number starting 973747. It is your turn to comment. 973747. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Good evening. This is William Scott, co-chair of the Montclair Housing Commission and chair of the Montclair NAACP Housing Committee. I would just like to take this opportunity to thank the mayor, Spiller, and council members who stood fast and continued to support the rent control ordinance of the Township of Montclair, which will be implemented shortly. It was a long-fought battle, not only the last few years, but this is a battle that's been going on for over 30 to 40 years in the Township of Montclair. So I just want to thank the Tenants Organization of Montclair, the Montclair Interfaith Clergy Association, the Montclair African American Clergy Association, the Montclair Housing Commission, the Montclair Citizens for Rent Control, the Montclair Homeowners Committee, the Montclair Senior Housing Action Group, and the Montclair NAACP. But also, I want to point out the fact that going back several decades, the Montclair Rent Regulation Working Group was the founding spokesfolks or spokespersons for the rent control ordinance that had been defeated multiple times in the past. So the folks that really should get some gratitude are the people that have always fought hard for what is necessary and what was needed in the Township of Montclair. I don't want to mention names, but these organizations have been critical in moving this conversation forward. I know the administration from the Township of Montclair is going to They've got a tremendous job in front of them, putting this implementation of the rent controls board together. Anything that I can do to support the implementation process, I'm more than happy to reach out. But thank you very much, and thank you all that have been involved in this for many years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 973-619. It is your turn to comment. 973-619. Please state your name for the record.
Hello, good evening. This is Ahava Felicidad, the president of the Tenants Organization of Montclair.
Ms. Felicidad, are you there? You seem to have lost you, Ms. Felicidad. If you do us the service of calling us back, we will do our best to get you back in the queue. Caller with the number starting 832-628. It is your turn to comment. 832-628. Please state your name and do your best to keep your comment.
Hi, this is Lisa Young. I just wanted to further...
Caller with the number starting 832-628.
Yes, hi, this is Lisa Young. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Just to further June Regner's comments on the devastating impacts of remote school on our kids, it would be in the best interest of the town to ensure people don't continue to move away from this town and want to continue to move and live here. Two of my son's classmates have moved to neighboring counties, towns to be somewhere that had in-person school in the last 2 months. You said to June and to me, Mayor Spiller, via email, that you have or will support in any way you can or that is requested of you, but didn't say in the email, by law, the mayor and council are barred from directing in any way decision-making, policy decisions, admin functions, etc. with regard to schools. However, you did step in with the ABA return to school, and if you cannot do anything, then what are you offering to help with? We are struggling. The parents in this town are struggling. The kids in this town are struggling. Other cities, states, countries are back at school, and we as residents of this town want to understand what the town and the mayor and the council can do to help get our kids back to school. We are not an anomaly. Montclair is special and unique, but not in this way. And we need to have our kids back in school before this town literally implodes. This is disgusting, it's gross, and it needs to be addressed at a town level. Step in, help out, figure out how to get them to talk to each other and communicate with the rest of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 718-791. It is your turn to comment on 798-791. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Hi, my name's John Sherman. I'm also associated with Montclair Beyond Policing, but and I called in at the last meeting. I'm also a Montclair resident for about 20 years. And I want to start out this time by, complimenting everyone and the mayor on such a forward-thinking town, and everything you said in your state of the town address at the beginning. And I love hearing too about Isla Gladstone and what she's doing. I mean, that's fantastic. And I want to keep this positive and really focus on, as you review the budget this year, and when the police department does come to you and presents their what they would like, I just want you to really do whatever you can to put Montclair into the idealistic and forward-thinking camp. Maybe, it'd be great if we came up with some bold initiatives. I know Peter Iacobellis, for one, I listened at the end of the last meeting, and he had some comments which gave me some hope, and that's really all I want to encourage. I mean, what he said then was he looks forward to what a public safety center of the future can be in Montclair, and what the law enforcement and the relationship of the community can look like. As we continue to take the lessons of the movements that have been happening across the country and absorb all the changes that are happening, I think there's ways to deal even with the body cam issue if we keep the big picture in mind. Maybe there's fewer police officers with body cams. And I also want to say, somewhat in response to Councilman Cummings' comments at the last meeting, which I really appreciated. So many positive things are being done that I think, I'm all behind. I just want to see it continue into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 862-250. It is your turn to speak. 862-250. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes. Caller 862-250. Caller with the number starting 973-420. It is your turn to speak. 973-420. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes. Caller 973-420.
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you, ma'am.
Yes, Phoebe Pollinger calling. I'm the chair of the Reproductive Rights Committee of the National Council of Jewish Women, Essex County Section, which is a member of Thrive New Jersey. Thrive New Jersey is a coalition of over 65 organizations throughout the state, advocating for a robust intersectional reproductive health policy, and is the driving force behind the Reproductive Freedom Act. I speak in support of Resolution Number 10, the Reproductive Freedom Act. NCJW has been working on behalf of women, children, and families for more than 100 years. Our efforts on behalf of social justice are very well reflected in the Reproductive Freedom Act, which provides for equal access to the full array of reproductive health care and ensures bodily autonomy and personal decision-making free from barriers, fear, or interference. We very much agree with your resolution that rights are not rights if there is no access to exercise them. I personally, and on behalf of NCJW Essex, strongly support the passage of the RFA and your resolution, and thank you, all of you, for standing up for equal, accessible, affordable reproductive health care. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 917-583. It is your turn to comment. 917-583. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comment under 3 minutes. Caller with the number starting 917583. Caller with the number starting 507213. It is your turn to comment. 507213. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Andy Conkey and I live in the Watchung Plaza area. First, I'd like to echo other callers in appreciating the mayor's speech and for the important accomplishments of the year, including the passage of the rent control ordinance. One of the major reasons my spouse and I moved to Montclair 3 years ago was because we wanted to live in a progressive, forward-looking town. So I really appreciate these sorts of actions. I'm calling to support any efforts to limit and reduce the use of gas-powered leaf blowers. I believe the long-term solution should be a year-round ban on gas-powered leaf blowers. I work from home, so for about 9 months out of the year, March through December, these machines are operating in my neighborhood probably 4 to 6 hours every weekday and most weekends. Even in summer, when there are no leaves on the ground and it's illegal to use them, I can look out my window and it's very common that I'll see 1, 2, or even 3 blowers going at a time on a small residential property. On each property, sometimes it's just 10 or 15 minutes, but more often it can be 30, 40, 50 minutes at a time with multiple machines. Again, even when there are no leaves on the ground. I don't know what this accomplishes, but I know that it spews immense amounts of pollution into the air, and I know that it makes it incredibly difficult for me and my spouse to concentrate, even inside our own home, even with all the windows closed. This past year, on dozens of occasions, the noise was so loud and so disruptive that I had to leave my home office and go to our unfinished basement just to be able to think straight and do my work. That shouldn't be what life in Montclair has to mean. I can't speak for every neighborhood, but where I live, it's really intolerable, and it has only gotten worse in the 3 years that I've lived here. Even though these machines are often operating on one property at a time, they affect the entire neighborhood, and we need the town to make a change. I want to be clear that I'm talking specifically about gas-powered leaf blowers. In my experience, lawnmowers and electric leaf blowers simply do not cause the same level of noise or disruption. They're also much less polluting. There's so many reasons to be transitioning away from gas-powered leaf blowers to other tools and other methods, and other towns are doing more than Montclair is, such as Maplewood. I urge you to make our law stronger and to enforce it. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 201281. It is your turn to comment. 201281. Please state your name for the record.
Hello.
And do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, this is Marcella Sinaderis. Hi. Third Ward resident. Praise the Lord, everybody. Yesterday was Martin Luther King Day. It has been 36 years since it has been declared a national holiday. However, the lack of progress in that 36 years is disturbing. In 1999, Coretta Scott King filed a suit in federal court with a claim that the federal government played a role in her husband's murder. In a unanimous decision, the jury found the United States government guilty of conspiracy to assassinate Martin Luther King. The jury was clearly convinced by the extensive evidence that was presented during the trial that there was a conspiracy between mafia, local, state, and federal government agencies. I bring attention to this because it's important for us to consider the role of local, state, and federal government agencies' involvement in acts of violence. In addition to the mayor alluding to Montclair as an example of progress, which I'm in agreement with,
or at least that's what people think. I would like to allude to the example he can set as N.J.S.A Vice President to model how we can use unionism for social justice and to combat racism by holding public servants accountable while adhering to due process in an expedient manner. It is my understanding that there was a fireman employed by the Montclair Fire Department that attended the rally in D.C. last week when the Capitol was stormed. I really would like to know how this council and mayor are going to investigate such claims, and if they're willing to set the example of what a real progressive town is supposed to do. I watched a clip that Stevie Wonder made on Twitter, and if anybody has access to Twitter, I would, ask them to check it out, because it was so useful in helping me understand something. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the National Independent Black Parent Association in town that organized last year to have racist intern superintendent Nathan Parker resign, but did not get the support of the community. And while I am all about the environment, and I echo the sentiments of all the speakers that spoke here tonight about that, it just saddens me how people can organize and get behind that issue, but can't get behind issues of social justice and people fighting for their race and their children.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 201-2222. It is 201-222. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
That's right. That's what you do. So there's no additional cost service.
Caller with the number starting 201-222. Caller with the number starting 201-424. 201-424. It is your turn to speak. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Hello, Mayor. This is Ron Simon, Montclair Property Owners Association. I'm just going to recognize that there were over 1,800 people who signed a petition who were deprived their right of citizen petition as a result of the council and clerk actions in attempt to defeat the rent control opposition, and that ultimately depriving those voters of their voice and their right in the very clever, I have to say successful, was done, suggests something very wrong about the value system of an elective body for whom people need to send petitions and for whom need those votes. And if you have to look a little bit deeper at this, 1,800 people, anybody who deprived them of their voice when they wanted to vote on control, and they were deprived of that right by manipulation of the process. And those people are going to remember that. We remember it, and this is far from over.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 973-619. It is your turn to comment. 973-619. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone listening, Mayor and Council.
Can you hear me?
Montclair, the Township of Montclair.
Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you, Ms. Felicidad. The only thing I would ask,
Excellent.
the only thing I would ask is that you mute all your listening devices, because we are hearing you twice. We're hearing a repetition.
Okay. Are you hearing me once now?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent.
Yes, this is Ahava of the Tenants Organization of Montclair Advocacy Group. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So the Tenants Organization of Montclair Advocacy Group revitalized this movement for rent control. Our leaders and members saw this through to fruition with you all, with the Mayor and Council. And there are thousands of people to still thank. And I ask that everyone listening to this call keep joy around this historic win for Montclair that happened on the actual birthday of the great late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We always want to make sure we point that out too. This historic win actually happened on that day. I want everyone listening to the call also to acknowledge the implementation as a win. We acknowledge everyone who set the foundation, those living and those past. Mr. Scott covered so many of the groups involved in the rent control ordinance and implementation. Great, and we thank everyone. And we are so grateful for all who helped us get rent control for the Township of Montclair. Keep joy, and I'm going to repeat that. Keep joy around this historic win. If you're just tuning in, this is a historic win for Montclair, and winners celebrate. Acknowledge the implementation as a win. We got into this fight to win. The belt is ours. It's ours. Now, the opposing group are actually given, for those who are just tuning in, 9 times the amount of chances to fulfill a need for their opposition, like 7 months to 210 days plus. This wasn't a tennis match. It was a rent control delay. And to be very clear, very precise, if it had, which it didn't, go to referendum, that the rent control ordinance, we would have still won implementation because this was already written to be in Montclair. It's an amazing time right now. Even during this time of the pandemic, there are still so many silver linings. And this just shows the amazing amount of positivity and hope that can come out of a few people staying the course and growing, speaking up for thousands. Even during a pandemic, there are so many people who really, truly cared and stayed in this. And I'm so proud of that in everyone. God bless you all. We look forward to our rent control implementation. It's done, and we should celebrate that. And we will continue to celebrate that as the implementation moves forward. Keep joy around this historic win for Montclair, N.J.S.A. Have a good night.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 973-873. It is your turn to comment. 973-873. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Happy New Year, everyone. My name is Jennifer Sweat, and I was born and raised in Montclair. Learning of the firefighters' participation in whatever facet at our Capitol on January 6, 2021 is alarming, as he is a public servant. The community deserves to feel safe, assured that a domestic terrorist is not serving our community, so you need a full investigation to be launched into his involvement immediately. Also, congratulations to Montclair with the rent control. That's nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 917-545. It is your turn to speak. 917-545. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Yes, John Van Wagner. My name is John Van Wagner. I'm the president of the Montclair Republican Club, and I'm calling in response to Councilor Robert Russo's Faristinette letter to the editor of 111. wherein he calls for Montclair Republicans to repudiate President Trump and those in Congress who support him. Speaking for my organization, I say categorically that we owe Mr. Russo nothing. We regard this broadside by an elected official against a small minority of his constituents as a dangerous precedent for other elected officials who choose to use their office as a platform to hector, suppress, and neutralize political opposition. The Montclair Republican Club has a proud 150-year history in our community. We are not an appendage of the Republican state or national apparatus, but rather a civic organization based on the principle that the individual is the origin and source of all value in society. As such, we abhor collectivism in its many iterations around the globe throughout history. The primary mechanism by which collectivism asserts its tyranny is through dehumanization, achieved through denying the individual the most fundamental of all prerogatives, that of free thought. So it was with real alarm and anger that during a meeting in recent days to discuss our reaction to Mr. Russo's letter, a handful of our members declared that though they resented and abhorred Mr. Russo's attack, they would not be able to call into the meeting today in protest because they feared for their jobs. Think about that. I challenge each and every member of this council to stop and think about that. Here in Montclair, the self-proclaimed pantheon of inclusion and diversity, there are citizens fearing for their livelihoods by going public with an oppositional opinion. In his letter, Mr. Russo relates his experience as a professor of political science and how he's always emphasized the, quote, once positive relationship between many more moderate and even progressive Republican leaders in Congress. Appealing to him as an educator, I'll remind him that a delegation from our club met with 2 members of this council last summer in relation to a peer campaign of violent threats launched against students at Montclair High School because of their publicly stated political positions. And sadly, that's just the most extreme example of the toll political indoctrination takes in our public school system. The promotion of left-wing ideology in multiple academic disciplines in the Montclair school system begins in kindergarten and continues through 12th grade. I speak from the personal experience of a student in my household and from what I see within the schools with my own eyes. It's a powerful process, and it's led to the tragic marginalization and demonization of young people who dare to resist it. So Mr. Russo wants a Republican Party that conforms more with his position. Putting aside for a moment the fiction that this governing body is nonpartisan, I'll respond by saying that we in the opposition would like a Democrat Party which values critical discourse over blacklisting and cancellation. The Montclair Republican Club rejects unconditionally the violence we witnessed in the Capitol on January 6th. Individual liberty does not exist without the rule of law, and we, like decent citizens across the country, condemn the Capitol invasion and call for the fullest and swiftest prosecution of anyone involved in it. But we know full well that Mr. Russo and the left-wing establishment in Montclair that our rejection of the actions of a splinter group of extremists won't be nearly enough. Conservatives, libertarians, and Republicans everywhere have raced for retribution and censorship from the left in the wake of the horrific events in the Capitol, and nowhere more so than Montclair. On social media, I've already noticed multiple instances of doxing, outing small business owners who have committed no crime, but have simply expressed support or attended rallies in support of the administration. And Mr. Russo has now added his voice to those who would silence us. His letter smacks
Mr. Van Wagner, I would ask you to sum up your comments, please.
All right. The last thing I have to say is this. I'd ask Mr. Russo about what happened to his letter to the editor last summer. Last summer, a federal building was invaded in Seattle, and mobs brought violence and devastation to the Capitol, to Minneapolis, and multiple other cities. His appeal for moderation has it's a very, very selected target. But if he can't bring himself to condemn violence categorically, an apology to the Montclair Republican community for his demeaning communique would take us a tiny step closer here in Montclair toward the unity those taking power in this nation claim to seek. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 973-744. It is your turn to comment. 973-744. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening. This is Suzanne Atman, co-chair of the Environmental Commission. Happy New Year to everyone, and congratulations on the rent control ordinance. I want to thank you tonight for considering the strengthening of the gas-powered leaf blower ordinance. Montclair, as you know, was a leader in passing the original ordinance restricting their use. And since that passing over a decade ago, more studies from health and environmental organizations, ranging from the American Heart Association to the American Lung Association to the EPA to the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, have attested to the harmful effects of the toxic two-stroke engine emission and particulate matter, including cancer, heart disease, exacerbation of asthma, allergies, and acute pulmonary disorders. Gas-powered leaf blowers are also terrible for the environment, as we know. They generate ground-level ozone at alarming levels, contributing to smog and climate change. And on an hour-for-hour basis, gas leaf blowers are estimated to produce roughly 20 times the smog-forming pollution of a typical passenger car. They also disrupt the natural ecosystem by removing leaves and grass clippings, which are an important source of soil nutrients and also a source of food and shelter for wildlife and insects during the winter. These leaf blowers are detrimental to residents' quality of life, and many Montclair residents live on small property lots, putting them in close proximity to leaf blowers which are used on their neighbors' properties. And besides generally just being a nuisance, it's extremely disruptive for students and at-home workers, and particularly important given the national trend toward remote work, which has been accelerated by COVID. At a broader level, in 2003, the Town Council adopted a resolution endorsing and adopting the policy of sustainability for township decision-making, purchasing, and operations. The goal was to implement the concepts of sustainability in all decision-making, purchasing, and operations. And that resolution defines sustainability programs and projects as those resulting in, quote, improved public health, improved environmental health, cost savings, preservation of property values, and quality of life benefits, end quote. So adopting further restrictions on these leaf blowers would provide not one, not two, but every single one of these benefits to the residents of Montclair. More recently, on January 8th, 2020, the Environmental Commission endorsed a proposal to reduce the months of usage of gas-powered leaf blowers and to limit weekend use. And we understand that the ordinance which you are currently discussing reduces spring use and calls for stronger enforcement. We support moving the ordinance in this direction, and we continue to wholeheartedly support council and township actions to reduce this even further. There are environmentally friendly alternatives out there that we can help you to find. So thank you so much, and please let us know if we can help in any way.
Thank you. Caller with the number beginning 862202, it is your turn to comment. 862202, please, for the record, state your name and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Greetings. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. My name is Kalia Sweat. I first want to wish you all a Happy New Year. My reason for attending the meeting tonight is due to my deep concern of what's happening in our nation and what seems to be being ignored and avoided within our local community. So as I said, I am Kalia Sweat. I am the local president of the NIBPA, National Independent Black Parent Association, organization that seeks to eradicate racism with an education. I'm also the founder of PAC, Parents Protecting All African Children, and I'm a former civil rights commissioner for the town of Montclair, which I served for an entire decade. So, you know, on January 6th, we all witnessed a horrible, horrible day, and we also witnessed white privilege at its best, right? So my purpose for wanting to connect with you this evening is because I'm noticing that from state to state, many people and employees are being exposed for their participation in what President Biden has clarified as being domestic terrorism and an insurrection. It's been brought to my attention that we do have a firefighter in the township of Montclair that was present in Washington on that day. I'm not sure what his participation was. Clearly, it's not illegal to attend a rally. However, if he participated in anything else, we need to know about that as a community for the sake of our safety and knowing that we don't have domestic terrorists who feel that they can do whatever they want just running around.
So I would like to urge you and encourage you to please, the township manager and each council person, to please investigate the involvement, to what degree in which that firefighter was involved. Because if he were involved, please know that anyone who is vulnerable and has a fire, we definitely do not need anyone like that coming into our home. It's bad enough that Montclair allowed interim superintendent by the name of Nathan Parker to make racist comments and remain and tear down protective factors specifically for children of color in Montclair. So for all persons who are in position right now, please do what you can while in your position to help keep some of us safe, especially those of us who are part of groups that truly need protection. You know, we saw a huge momentum as it pertains to race relations a few months ago, and it seems to be dying down. But please, let's keep that momentum going and that level of consciousness to ensure that all persons within this community are safe and protected from all animals like the ones who stormed the Capitol. So please investigate so we will know if this person was involved any further. Thank you.
Mr. Stafford, you're muted. It's just classic. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 8650. It is your turn to comment. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes. 862250. Thank you. Caller with the number starting 862250.
Why can't they hear me?
We can hear you, sir.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. Like, why can't they hear me? Okay, yes, hi. This is Abraham Dickerson with Montclair Citizens for Equality and Fair Policing. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone that has called and spoke loudly about police reform. First of all, I'd like to thank some of the people who I have met with in regards to police reform in Montclair this summer. That's been Brendan Gill, Mr. Cummings, and Mr. Russo. Before I start, the first thing I'd like to say, we need to remove the blue line from our police vehicles in this township. That is just another symbol of hate and division. Since the protest this past summer, although I met with several individuals, I have not seen or heard of any specific plans from the township perspective on rearranging or reducing the police budget in this town. Although there was promises this summer during the protest of working with the public and being more transparent about police reform, I have yet to see any initiation from the town perspective. The only person that I have heard from in regard to some possible things that might be happening is Mr. David Cummings, who seems to understand some of the issues from both perspectives, and he has been working with me on the 9 mandates. I think in light of what has happened at the Capitol on January 6th, that it proves that the distrust between the public and the police department is even greater than we thought. Where there have been several confirmed reports that police officers from all over the country participated in that insurrection. It's now more than ever important for townships like Montclair to form working groups with the community so we can go over the police budget and sincerely talk about the changes that are necessary. I think it's important that the public understand why there has been so much overtime with the Montclair Police Department. I also think the public needs to understand why we have so many gasoline-powered SUVs versus hybrid vehicles. For an example, we talk about police reform. Do we really want an unarmed mental health professional showing up by themselves to a crisis call? Or do we train 4 or 5 officers currently on the force how to handle specific mental health crises? Or do we have officers coming out of the academy with that skill set already? Which one of these options will be most cost effective? This is the reason why we should have police reform working groups in this township. I believe that we need a police budget that's not self-serving, but serves the public as it was intended to do with transparency. This past spring, after the protest rise, Montclair Citizens for Equality and Fair Policing and the People's Foundation presented 9 mandates that we felt that Montclair Police Department could start working on immediately. Number 1 being the body camera, which ironically, that was one of the few things that everyone across the board agreed on. It's the first thing that's being debated on in Montclair as a budget issue as relates to police reform. Also, it's important for our citizens to continue to put pressure on our local police to change in the direction that spawns trust, confidence, and a police department that shows it's people. This can't be business as usual in America. America needs new leadership that would fit the needs of our long-awaited citizens. I'd like to hear from Mr. Moving forward on this issue, because I understand that the town manager calls the shot on how money is moved around for the police department. So one small thing before I go, I was sadly missed that the Montclair Police Department did not put out a strong condemnation against the act that happened on January 6th, and also gave us confidence of some form of research that there was no police officer that participated in that insurgent. Thank you. Take care, and kudos to the tenants organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 914413. It is your turn to comment. 914413. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Yeah, hi, it's Ian Young. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You mentioned Montclair is a progressive, forward-looking town, and I like to think so. You also mentioned that the White House had a disastrous term and how you sent a message to them on several issues like women's reproductive rights and immigration. You also mentioned how towns look to Montclair as a beacon of leadership. I want to ask why it is then that the incoming president, the governor of New Jersey, the mayor of New York City, with the largest school district, are all advocates and are being successful opening our schools. Yet Montclair is going backwards. As you say, the White House has been wildly unsuccessful. Well, so is this town when it comes to our children's education. Education should be a cornerstone of any good progressive town and what any town stands for. It's widely documented that fully remote learning is so detrimental for children and for families. I urge you to get involved. I urge you to help. It's been nearly a year. As other schools, other areas find ways of going forward, we stutter and we go backwards. Montclair's reputation is being tarnished every day. This is a clear failure for our children, for our families, for taxpayers and for residents, and for our town overall. I please urge you again to get involved, help the parties get to a conclusion and make progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the number starting 917583. It is your turn to comment. 917583. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Yes, but yeah.
Hello, we can hear you. Caller with the number starting 201222. It is your turn to comment. 201222. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes. Two zero one 222. Caller with the number starting 973634. It is your turn to comment. 973634. Please state your name for the record, and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Steve Maserlian, and this is my first time calling in. I'm calling about the letter written by Bob Russo, and I'm hoping that this can work out. Sincerely hope that this can work out for the better for everybody. I would like to see and I was going to write a letter and prepare my comments and everything. I didn't. Instead, I'm lounging on my couch right now and making this phone call. And it's my sincere hope that perhaps Mr. Russo and maybe someone else, Mr. Herlock or somebody else, I don't know, could get together and arrange some sort of a meeting where people can freely come and start to exchange ideas as to what they think about President Trump or upcoming President Biden. And perhaps we can exchange ideas in a way that will be beneficial for everyone. If we go forward with one set of ideas that we feel very comfortable with, it will not benefit anybody. We might think it'll benefit us, but it will not.
Hello? Caller with the number starting 201-281. It is your turn to comment. 201-281, please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes. Caller 201.
This is Marcella. You already heard me, so if you want me to go on and keep talking, I can tell you a whole bunch of other stuff too.
That's quite all right. Thank you, man. Caller number with the number starting 862-202. It is your turn to comment. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes. Caller 862-202. Caller 646-220. It is your turn to comment. 646-220. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes. Caller with the number starting 917-583. 917-583. It is your turn to comment. Please state your name for the record and do your best to keep your comments under 3 minutes. Caller with the number starting with, well, it turns out, Mayor, there are no other people in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Appreciate that. And thank you for helping to facilitate the call management there. We appreciate that.
Certainly.
So with that, I will close public comment. Next, moving down to the items that we have on our agenda for action. First, we will start with the first, which is Resolution R21-005, resolution authorizing the transfer of funds in accordance with the provision of N.J.S.A 40A:4-59, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions, concerns, comments? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilor Cummings?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herlock?
Yes.
Councilor Price Abrams? Councilor Price Abrams?
Yes. Yes, I've tried to say yes a couple times.
Russo?
Yes.
Councilor Slager?
Yes.
Councilor Counselor Yacovelis,
Yes.
Mayor Spiller.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Items 2 through 11 are on our consent agenda. And without objection, I will move as a group. So moved.
Second?
Mr. Mayor, just one question. Can I ask on number 2, when we have to designate newspapers, maybe the clerk can answer this for me. We've always designated the Star Ledger and the Montclair Times, and we have a third newspaper, Montclair Local. I'm just wondering, what is the decision based upon that these are the 2 papers? I know there's 3 now we could be doing it in.
May I?
Okay, so with that though, I will, it sounds like, have item number 2 is held out by Councilman Russo. We have items 3 through 11, which is on the consent agenda and have been so moved.
And so seconded?
And so seconded. Any questions or holdouts on the other ones? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Counselor Cummings,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hurlock,
Yes.
Counselor Price Abrams,
Yes.
Counselor Russo,
Yes?
Counselor Schlager,
Yes.
Counselor Yacovelis,
Yes.
Mayor Spiller.
Yes. Resolution R21-006 is a resolution designating the official newspapers for 2021, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions, concerns, comments? Councilman Russo, I believe you expressed a question. Madam Clerk?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, there's regulations on what deems a newspaper to be considered legal, and Ira would be able to speak to, if you there are, yes, he'll be able to speak to if you want to know the particulars as to what those regulations are. But the 2 newspapers that are included on this resolution do meet those regulations. That's why they were included here, in addition to the fact that they've been included in the past, like you noted.
I'd just like to comment to Mayor, if I can. I did that research myself and came to the same conclusion that the Montclair Local is not an official legal newspaper that we can recognize.
Well, is that the attorney's opinion? I appreciate Peter, but you're not the town attorney. Ira, why these 2 and not the other one?
I'm trying to remember if I was asked to look at this, frankly, but I do know that there are the regulations about how long the paper's been there, what its circulation is, there are all kinds of points that have to be met, and I'll take a look at it if you'd like, Counselor, but I tend to trust the clerk having looked at this, but I will look at it. I haven't looked at it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
We can always add.
The idea is that most people will read. Most people are not reading even the Star Ledger anymore. I'm just saying, why don't we do our 2 local papers? That wouldn't suffice.
We don't often advertise in the Star Ledger. We need it there because sometimes.
Interject.
What?
The Star Ledger is on the approved list and has been for quite a number of years because it's a daily paper. And there are some instances over the course of normal business where the governing body takes action on Tuesday night at a meeting like tonight, and we are constrained for some reason to have the matter published in a paper so as to, as quickly and as expediently as possible, to effectuate the governing body's business, publish, yet the weeklies don't allow us necessarily to do that because of their publishing deadlines, which precede our Tuesday meetings. That's why the ledger is on the approved list.
Thank you, man. See, that's the reason. The daily paper has to be one of them then. But, technology is changing to such an extent. I just let everybody, think about this. We may be able to publish something online quicker than in the print. Thank you, Manager. That's
Rules haven't changed yet to allow that.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'll vote for it.
Okay. This is an expenditure of funds. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Abstentions? Okay. Thank you. The item passes. Moving on to the next item, Resolution R21-016 is a resolution supporting the passage of the New Jersey Reproductive Freedom Act, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions, concerns, or comments?
Yes, Mayor, I would like to make a comment if I may.
Please.
Mayor, I wanted to thank you for both acknowledging it in your comments, both with regard to the state and the resolution we're about to consider, and also that you had pulled together earlier, just a few months ago in the fall of last year, a public program to help better educate on the need for such a measure. I was happy to learn at the time that New Jersey legislators had introduced such a measure. We may not realize the need to safeguard these cherished freedoms for all in our state, allow people to make their own personal health care decisions, and particularly their reproductive health care. And this law, or the bill that is we're aiming to help promote to be law, would establish that fundamental right. And these options do include birth control, pregnancy-related care, and as well as abortion. A lot of us may think that these matters are important at the federal level, given what we're thinking about the court and the cherished freedoms we're talking about tied to the Roe v. Wade decision. We know that the anniversary of Roe is in January every year. It's actually the 22nd. We're talking about a decision from 48 years ago, and that may be under attack. But beyond that, there's also a state angle and a reason that we should entrench and pass this measure, and why we would support it tonight. And New Jersey isn't a place where everyone has access to all of their reproductive health care needs to be met. And this may come as a surprise to some of us. The Guttmacher Institute in just past September 2020, in their state facts about abortion indicate that, quote, in 2017, some 33% of New Jersey counties had no clinics that provide abortions, and 26% of New Jersey women live in these counties. So it's a staggering fact that such great numbers of women and others who can become pregnant. I think we have to think more broadly, and I know the language of the legislation actually does consider other people who can get pregnant who don't identify as women. So expanding our minds that way. But anyway, these measures, it's one of the safest medical procedures. It has tremendous impact on a person's life, and about which 7 in 10 Americans agree should be available. So as the caller earlier, Phoebe Pollinger, had acknowledged the Thrive Coalition, I wanted to similarly acknowledge they're a group of health and faith and policy-based organizations that have helped develop this legislation. Forward the resolution that we should call for its swift enactment, and as the governor had in his recent State of the State. So I appreciate the opportunity to be heard on this and hope to have the support of my colleagues.
Thank you. Any other questions, concerns, comments? Hearing none. And again, this is a non-financial piece. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Abstentions? All right, thank you very much. The resolution passes. Thank you very much, Councilwoman Price Abrams. I appreciate your advocacy and work in this area. As I noted before, I'll note again, but thank you so much for spending the time on this in this important issue. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Next, we have Resolution R21-017, which is the bill list resolution, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Councilwoman Schlager, would you please do the honors?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Whereas invoices against the Township of Montclair in favor of the following persons for the amount set opposite their respective names have been received, duly audited, and found correct. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the Township of Montclair in the County of Essex that said invoices be, and they are hereby ordered paid, and that checks be drawn by the Finance Department to the order of such persons, the amounts respectively and hereinafter stated on the schedule attached hereto and made a part hereof. This bill list is dated January 19th, 2021, the amount of $9,428,750.91. And I so move.
Right, thank you, Councilwoman. So we've moved it and seconded. Any questions, concerns, or comments on the bill list? Councilwoman Schlager. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Unfortunately, the bill list is not numbered, so it's hard to tell you what page things are on, but I had a couple of quick questions. There was one charge here for connections at home in Verona for $17,916. It says CARE-Act 2020.
That is an agreement with a company that provided 20 computers, installation assistance, and tech support in the form of a social worker to seniors that were homebound, that have been homebound throughout the duration of the pandemic, and it was funded through CARES Act funds.
Oh, that's great to know. Great. Thank you. And there was, oh, never mind on that one. And then there was one what I thought was odd. It's payable to the Montclair Art Museum for $900. And the memo says holiday party.
Yes, there was a virtual holiday party for seniors. And a premise of that holiday virtual party was that the Montclair Art Museum provided 50 painting supply kits that were provided to the seniors who painted, and then on the virtual holiday party had the benefit of instruction by a Montclair Art Museum instructor.
Oh, that's marvelous. That's really great. I wish I knew about that early. That's great. Thank you very much.
I will use that opportunity, Councilwoman, to really give a special thank you to Sue Portuguese, Mr. Stafford. I know that having the opportunity to now serve on their board, it's been great to see them connect. They reached out. We had some conversations specifically about some of the senior pieces that they could help with, being that we know our seniors are isolated in many cases. So not only them, but entities like Vanguard Theater, the museum, others have created some specific senior programming and activities to engage our seniors while we're in this virtual time. So it's a great example of some pretty cool things happening. So good stuff. So glad you're highlighting it. Thank you.
That's great. Yes, thank you. Okay, those were all my questions. Good answers, Mr. Stafford.
Mr. Stafford, last thing I'll note on that, I know programs are sometimes antiquated. So if there's a way, though, maybe that they can add just page numbers to assist, as the councilwoman noted, that would make everyone's life, I'm sure, a little bit easier. But everything at the top of your head anyway. So kudos, but just to note that. Okay. Are there any other questions, concerns, or comments? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Councillor Cummings?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Hurlock?
Yes.
Councillor Price Abrams?
Yes.
Councillor Russo?
Yes.
Councillor Slager?
Yes.
Councillor Yacobelis?
Yes.
Spiller? Mayor Spiller?
Yes, thank you. All right, thank you for that. With that, I will now turn it over to comments from, let's start with Mr. Stafford today.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sad to have to relay that as of this evening, the official reports are that the confirmed number of COVID-19 cases in Montclair is 1,535. And that number includes, as you mentioned earlier, 62 individuals who did not survive the illness. This evening, the township joined with fellow Americans for a national moment of remembrance for the more than 400,000 people who succumbed to COVID-19 by illuminating the municipal building in amber light, starting at 5:30. The National Moment of Unity and Remembrance was organized by the Presidential Inaugural Committee and included a first-ever lighting of the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool in our nation's capital to honor those who have died as the result of COVID-19. And I'd like to thank specifically Councilor Price Abrams for bringing that to our attention so that we could hustle and procure through the efforts, the diligent efforts of Michael Perez, who works in this building, an amber light to be able to participate. The Montclair Fire Department and local pub Just Jake's are partnering in a food drive for Tony's Kitchen Food Ministry. The food drive will run through February 12. Food items may be dropped off at any of our 3 township fire stations. That's at our headquarters at 1 Pine Street, Fire Station number 2 at 588 Valley Road, and Fire Station number 3 at 151 Harrison Avenue. What kind of food does Tony's Kitchen need? The best food donations are shelf-stable items within their expiration dates. These include tuna, soup, nuts, rice, dried fruit, breakfast items such as, I'm told, oatmeal, cereal bars, etc., and peanut butter, pasta and pasta sauce. But with respect to those types of items, please, they urge you not to donate in glass jars. The County of Essex is currently registering the following for the COVID-19 vaccinations. Those in Group 1A, including healthcare workers and others working to support in a healthcare setting, as well as adults 65 years and older, and anyone between the ages of 16 and 64 with medical conditions as defined by the CDC that increase the risk of severe illness from the virus. These conditions include smoking. To register for an appointment, please visit www.essexcovid.org or call 973-877-8456 to register for an appointment. Montclair residents are tested or are vaccinated at the former Kmart building, which is located at 235 Prospect Avenue in West Orange. The County of Essex has set up a call center that can be reached by dialing 973-877-8456 to answer Essex COVID-19 vaccination and testing questions. The call center hours are Monday through Friday, 8 to 8, and on Saturday from 8 to 5. There are several upcoming Essex County COVID testing locations and dates, and they include Thursday the 21st from 3:30 to 6:30 p.m. at the Essex County Department of Public Works, which is located at 99 West Bradford Avenue in Cedar Grove. Also, Saturday, January 23 from 8 a.m. to 12 noon at the Essex County South Mountain Recreation Complex commuter parking deck located at 560 Northfield Avenue in West Orange. Additional dates will be announced by the county. Essex County residents age 8 and older with or without symptoms are encouraged to get tested, and residents are encouraged to get retested if they've been tested 14 days ago or more and have received negative results or are asymptomatic. Testing is provided free of charge to Essex County residents. No insurance whatsoever is required, though testing is by appointment only. To make an appointment, please call the number I mentioned before, 973-877-8456, or visit www.essexcovid.org. The county will hold its next emergency food distribution event on Thursday, January 21 at 9 a.m. at the Calvary Baptist Church located at 66 South Grove Street in East Orange. The food distribution event will be held rain or shine. I would like to reiterate the critical information that New Jerseyans who are feeling the emotional and mental toll of COVID-19 can get support from a special helpline. New Jersey Mental Health Cares, New Jersey Behavioral Health Information and Referral Service, is offering help to people dealing with anxiety and worry related to COVID-19. New Jerseyans can call 1-866-202-HELP. That's 1-866-202-4357 for free confidential support. This line is staffed from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week by live trained specialists. Lastly, several callers discussed during public comment a township employee being in Washington on the day of last week's hideous riots. This is a personnel matter, and as such, it would be completely inappropriate for me to discuss in detail the issue in this forum. And of course, given our form of government, the governing body has no role whatsoever in personnel matters. That said, it is critical for township residents to know that this matter, like all such matters, is taken very, very seriously, and an appropriate, prompt, if not immediate analysis was commenced as soon as the issue was learned. I'm compelled to say, by virtue of the fact that folks brought it up during public comment, that if any township employee was suspected to have taken part in any crime, the issue would immediately be referred to the appropriate law enforcement agency. And of course, in this instance, that would be the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I would handle that myself immediately. I'm also, though, compelled to say, given how seriously we take this, that on the FBI's website, there is an array of photos of those folks who the FBI is seeking information in connection with the assault on federal officers and violence at the United States Capitol. I've also seen firsthand a cleverly but unfortunately and hideously doctored version of that FBI photo array where a township employee's picture is posted on that array. That too is just disgusting and vile, as disgusting as the riots. So again, I want everyone to know, I take this as the township takes this incredibly seriously. We take swift and immediate, decisive, appropriate action. However, putting an employee's picture on an FBI photo array is not acceptable. And so I want to disabuse anyone who has seen that of the idea that that is actual. Please, if you'd like to see for yourself, visit the New Jersey FBI website and you'll see. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Next, let's go to our Deputy Manager, Mr. Scandalberg.
Thank you, Mayor. As we just finished celebrating the 35th MLK Day, I would like to remind some and apprise others that Dr. King did indeed come to Montclair in September 1966. He came to the Union Baptist Church for the installation of Reverend William H. Gray III, who was assuming the pulpit with the retirement of Reverend D.C. Rice, Stuart Carver Rice. You may recall that name, William Gray, is because once he left Union to go back to assume his father's pulpit, when his father became ill, he became the congressman for Pennsylvania's 2nd Congressional District, I think. And he was the first African-American chair to the House Budget Committee and the House Majority Whip. And if you travel on train to Philly, what used to be the 30th Street Station is named in his honor today. But because Dr. King was a friend of Bill Gray's father, he came to speak at the installation. And after church service, there was an afternoon program at Montclair High School in the auditorium. And that's where an 11-year-old guy got to shake Dr. Martin Luther King's hand. It's one of those times where you know at that time it's a special moment. Sometimes you can look back on things and say, yeah, that was special. You knew right then and there was a similar moment. And there are still some people in Montclair who were kids with me who had the same experience. These names may sound familiar: Alfreda Massip, Marlon Brown, Joanne Childs Ash, and there were some, we were kids, but there were some young adults, Stanley White being one, and Sandra Crisp being another, and my brother Terry. That was a day that stuck in our minds. And so there is a legacy with Dr. King being in Montclair, and it's stuck here, and Stanley's doing a great job with continuing with the Dr. Martin Luther King Scholarship Fund. He was there that Sunday too. That's it, man.
Thank you, sir. And certainly, while we all usually have an opportunity to get together to celebrate and honor Dr. King, and certainly recognize our students at the usual scholarship breakfast, which occurs on the Monday of Martin Luther King Day celebration, we unfortunately couldn't get together. Hopefully, many were able to witness the virtual recognition event that we did have. But certainly, we all look forward to hopefully getting back together again next year. So, but thank you for sharing. Really, just that an example of how it really connects home and how it's personal, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, can we hear from our clerk, Madam Clerk, Bermudez Nieves?
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report tonight.
All right, thank you for that. Our Township Attorney, Mr. Krasick.
I don't have any report, Mayor. I just wanted to say that there's been we did, in fact, at least prevail in this stage of the rent control lawsuit. But I think the thing that's been overlooked is really quality work done by the clerk. what the judge in fact did was uphold her work and say that she did it rationally and reasonably and well, basically. So the judge, the victory really belongs there, and I just wanted to acknowledge it.
Thank you very much. Next, let's go to, let's start with Councilman Russo.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to tell you, I thought your speech was great. I wasn't going to say much tonight, but I do have to say that the Martin Luther King Scholarship Fund program was very nice, and I really enjoyed one speaker, one young man who's named David Cummings Jr. Councilor Cummings' son really spoke well about his experiences in getting the scholarship and the work he's doing in college, and I want to connect him with my nephew, my godchild, who's gone into the same field. So we'll talk about that, David. Just so everybody knows, when I wrote a letter, I wasn't speaking for the council, but I was speaking for myself, and I stand by what I've said. But I do want to say, if anybody took that the wrong way, I apologize. The two callers tonight were very polite, but I do want to emphasize that I've offered to meet and talk to anyone. You know, I've always been willing to meet with the landlords who are mad about what we did with tenants. I've talked to some of them and trying to make them understand that rent control was vital to keep this town diverse, keep it affordable, to help seniors, to help single mothers and families and new couples that move in and young people who just have an apartment of their own. People cannot afford 20, 30% rent increases. 4.25% is reasonable, very reasonable. And I think that we've been upheld. And as the town attorney said, the clerk did a good job. The references to that, where we are accused of manipulating or something, you know, with leaving out people. There were plenty of people who signed or thought they signed to vote were rejected by, clerks, because now today there's a strange situation when you do things by electronics. The signatures just don't match as they used to. But nobody's ever tried to stifle debate or to stifle the voice of the people. What we did as a council, and I just have to say this again, Councilor Schlager, myself, Mayor Spiller, and Deputy Mayor Herlock were on the council when we did this last year. And it was a long period of discussion and, debate over this. And we came to the conclusion that we had to do it. We heard from so many people who were struggling to stay in town, a lot of seniors particularly. And it was unfair when certain landlords, and not all doing bad things, but certain landlords were doubling the rent or, increasing it 50%. And there was no way to limit that. Young man who called in earlier, Republican Club, talks about collectivism. Well, we are a society. The United States is a union. Collectivism. I'm a very individualist person. I was in a group called the Society of Individualists when I was in college at Rutgers. And when I realized at some point, I have very individualistic views. I'm very, very historical. When I look at Teddy Roosevelt and Lincoln, these are great presidents, and Eisenhower, I talk about the past of the Republican Party, the past of the Democratic Party. These are historical facts. And collectivism, all I'd like to say is when Eisenhower got our troops with England's troops and other troops to storm the beaches of Normandy, that was a collective action. We wouldn't have defeated the Nazis without that action. It's a collective action. And when people join together in unions, and that's my last point to that, is Dr. King died fighting for the Memphis, Tennessee sanitation workers to have a union, just to have a union, to be able to bargain with the city. It was a tragic thing that happened in the midst of a fight for unions. So Dr. Martin Luther King had a history of advocating for working people and for people to be working collectively in unions. And as my union goes, my AFT union goes, that is a root, fundamental belief of mine. But I do respect everybody's opinion. I wish we could have the dialogue someone mentioned, and I'm happy to do that with anyone who calls in or anyone who wants to talk to me at any time. But I also stick to my guns on what I said. What happened last week is a tragedy. What happened has to be condemned by everyone. I condemn all violence, whether it occurred in Minneapolis, Portland, Seattle, left, right, but storming the Capitol and trying to change the outcome of the election and practically killing the vice president by a few minutes, he and others like Nancy Pelosi avoided being hurt. The damage done by that group has to be condemned. To say, you know, I or others didn't condemn other violence doesn't mean that we all shouldn't condemn this particular violence, which was absolutely terribly un-American. So I'd like everyone to fight and work together against that type of violence, which I hope we're not going to see in the future, but I do worry about it because people's relationships are so strained. So let's look at Dr. Martin Luther King's history, the history of the Republican Party under Eisenhower, Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt. These are the kinds of leadership. I'm a John F. Kennedy Democrat myself, and I believe that those kinds of presidents who brought everyone together are the kinds of presidents we need. And we're going to get one tomorrow, and a vice president who will make us proud. She will make us proud, and I'm proud to be a supporter of President Biden and Vice President Harris. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Yacobelis.
Thanks, Mayor. Just finding the unmute button. I appreciate all those comments from Councilman Russo. I know it's been a challenging week, and there's been a war of words, and it's obviously been a tense moment for the country overall, but I'm glad to hear all the level-headed commentary tonight. I feel it's a personal issue for me because within my own nuclear immediate family, you know, we're divided and we fight and argue all the time, and we've gotten to the point where, you know, relationships have potentially been severed as a result. So I'm always very conscious of that discourse, and I want to be a part of any conversation that brings people together to focus on what we have in common more so than what divides us. Switching gears, I want to thank Olympian Alexis Sablone for coming to Montclair last week. It was a real treat. She's doing some work with Montclair State University and is going to be doing some work to design some sculptures for the skate park. The effort, you know, has been led by Councilwoman Schlager for quite a long time, and of course the folks at Skate Essex and Skate Montclair. And it's really exciting to just see how much momentum and energy and support there is from the community on that. I'm just excited to see where that goes. I want to just bring up leaf blowers again, you know, just reminding everyone, you know, we do have an ordinance that, you know, based on my conversations with my colleagues, at this point has at least 4 to 5 votes. I know we're holding out hope that we can make some additional improvements to the ordinance. I just want to remind everyone that, you know, March 1st will be here before we know it, and looking at the timeline that it takes to introduce and pass and for an ordinance to go into effect, I want to make sure that we're conscious of the fact that the current ordinance that's on the table calls for the month of March to be eliminated in terms of a permitted month for the internal combustion leaf blowers. So we'll need to take action on that quite soon, and I'm hoping that we can continue those conversations sooner than later. Just to elaborate, because someone mentioned it earlier when they called in on my comment in regards to Public Safety Center of Excellence last week is really kind of driven by looking at the condition of the current police station and understanding its sort of status and knowing it doesn't have a very long lifespan. And as we think about municipal facilities in town in the future, I think designing and having a police station that we can call something along the lines of a Public Safety Center of Excellence that thinks about all the ways the public interacts with law enforcement, it could be a real opportunity for a town like Montclair. And that's what I meant by that comment a couple weeks ago. I also want to thank Abraham for calling in and others for calling in and keeping the issue top of mind. Philosophically, I am of the mind that first response needs to be have many different responses. Truly, it's not always the best for a police officer to show up when most of the time we're dealing with human services issues. And there are cities and states and towns all around America that are experimenting with different approaches to public safety and first response. And I really philosophically feel strongly about introducing a stronger human services element to that over time. That's all my comments. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Thank you very much. Next, let's go with our fourth ward councilman, Councilman Cummings.
Mayor, thanks a lot. To Robin, Bob,
Sean, Bill. You guys, I really admire the effort and work that you've put in, because I could tell you 6 months into this, my appreciation for what you all have done for 8 years is I cannot, really explain it. I will say that as I start that I want to recognize MNDC for its 50th gala. That's truly a Montclair treasure. I was proud to be a part of last night's gala, and I think it's organizations like MNDC that truly reflect who we are. The student at Buzz Aldrin, the work that she's done, that's just tremendous. The Lions Club coming to support Montclair. I want to make sure that Wild Choice of Million Man Montclair, who brought them here, is acknowledged. He worked with local Omega Psi Phi, Eureka Lounge, Young Black Fathers, and others from MNDC. So again, another collaboration to get people and support people in their need. And Bob, I want to thank you for mentioning my son as the the MLK scholarship program yesterday. Yes, he was excited about it, and Stan White has done a tremendous job. My two kids in college right now are both recipients. And what's really special about that scholarship is it's for 4 years. Every year, a student gets some money that really helps with their books and incidentals. It's not a significant amount, but it's enough to cover a lot of things that I think I personally am happy I didn't have to pay for. When it comes to Dr. Martin Luther King, my connection with MLK starts by attending Morehouse College, his alma mater. But I also worked for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference while I was in school. And that's the organization Dr. King started. Working for the SLC put me in the same room with civil rights leaders like Wyatt T. Walker, Joseph Lowry, Ralph David Abernathy, and Hosea Williams. And hearing them converse with one another directly in meetings was surprising, because their language and tone was not too much different than how I spoke with my friends. But the work and effort that they were fighting for, it made a strong impression on me for my life. And I can never forget the times when I moved to Mississippi and I'd have to drive to Montgomery. That route takes you over the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And to be a part of that history, when you really see it, as opposed to reading about it or looking at it from television, you see that road that they walked. It's not a short walk. And so, to be a part of that and have that as something that's part of my life has always carried with me, particularly when it comes to Black history. Because while I was in Mississippi, I worked on the staff with one of our reporters, Jerry Mitchell, actually broke the story that sent Byron De La Beckwith, who killed Medgar Evers, to jail. So again, it was just being a part of that in the Deep South, that I cannot really explain it other than to say it's a lot different when you're there and you live it and you drive those roads. In terms of Township, the callers who expressed concern about defunding the police or the police budget, and your concerns about the budget, I will say, is legitimate at a time like this. However, I do consider our force to be one that truly reflects this community. And for me, all the people who called in, please tell me when you've had interaction with our force and it was negative. Because as I talked to Chief Conforti and we have these conversations, he's made it clear that any officer responding to a mental health call has had training. They train our officers. And I don't think it's up to us as a council to send the letters that we receive from other people about how Montclair police officers have handled situations like that. But I do think that when we're bombarded with concerns about it, that I think people really need to take back and tell me, when did you personally have an issue? Because it's easy to read a newspaper article that tells you that our police force has a lot of, use of force things, but give me the facts. That's what I try to deal with. And it is a legitimate concern, because when we do talk about the body cams, as Councilor Russo has stated, it is something that, I wouldn't say it's an unfunded mandate, because the county has said that they'll give us the body cams. But what they're not going to pay for is the server and the extra 2 officers that we need to bring on. So while we're saying let's defund the police, we're looking at hiring 2 officers about the things that you're asking us to do. So that's what I think when Mr. Bob Russo was kind of talking about when it comes to unfounded mandates. And I think that's why I hope people really take a step back and understand that you are being heard. But when we sit down and we meet, we have these discussions and we're talking to the individuals who give us facts. Now, my final thing, and I say this all the time, where was all this before George Floyd? I want to look back at our council meetings and see, when was this brought up? Because to me, our community police, and if you compare them to other police, I would say our staff has a lot of residents who are on staff, a lot of diversity on staff, and a lot of individuals who not only grew up in Montclair, but also live here. And so I think our staff is one, our police department is one that has my support. And until I see something that really, really comes to a point where their concerns are, or their issues are something that need to be called upon, it will be called upon. But one thing I will not do, and I say this respectfully, is challenge them for something in which they're doing a good job. That's just not something I'm going to do. So I think we do have to look into the relationship that is being concerned about when it talks about mental health crisis centers and things like that, along with the costs. Finally, I want to make sure that I say that to the property owners, yes, it's great that you guys won. It's great that that ordinance is passed, but now this council has to do the work of implementing it and looking into how we're going to implement it to the best for the township. And that's going to be a challenge for us. And I want to also give a shout out to Jason Gleason and the bid. Jason called me up. It might have been Christmas Eve, telling me that he received word from the state that he's got about $1 million to spend on businesses. And the first thing he said to me was, David, I want to make sure that these grants go to some fourth ward businesses. So Jason did the work of walking up and down Bloomfield Avenue. I gave him a couple of names, but overall the bid gave out, I believe the number he gave me was $134,000 grants to businesses in the bid. And so Jason, I do want to make sure that I thank you for that. And I believe there are much more that the bid's going to continue to do. So as I leave this final long meeting where we had a tremendous amount of phone calls and callers calling in, I want to say that as we head into the next few months, there are some decisions that we're going to have to make, and there are some things that we're going to have to do, as Councilor Iacobellis brought up in terms of the leaf blowers. There's a lot of discussion to be had. My personal feeling is that when I look at what South Orange Maplewood is doing, they have what I consider a pretty strong ordinance, but they're also in litigation. And once that litigation is settled, I think that'll give us a foundation to really look at. Because why would we pass an ordinance if South Orange Maplewood loses? That then can be the ordinance that we're going to get challenged by the landscapers. So I think there needs to be some prudence and some real discussions, but also some collaboration amongst us so that we all can get on the same page as how we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate it. Next, let's go to Third Ward Councilwoman Lori Price Abrams. Lori?
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I do want to also acknowledge Mr. Stafford, because I had just read about that piece about the American National Monument of Unity and Remembrance, if that's the right title, this morning, and shot it right over. And to your credit, you just literally pulled it together and pinged everybody you had to go make sure we could be part of something that it just feels good to be connected to something larger and something that's to memorialize people, but also be sort of in the space of bringing unity among all people. We're in this powerful transition moment in our democratic system, and while that's had a certain huge demonstrable blemish just a week or two ago, I think all the things that we can do as we set forward the new administration, it was a really beautiful thing, and I just appreciate that you not only took it to heart, did it quickly, and helped publicize that folks in town could also participate, and houses of worship could chime their bells if they had them. And so that was just a meaningful, and I appreciate that you took that on so quickly. Of some of the other things and threads, we spoke earlier about some of the things that we've had even in our bills, and that monies have been set aside for some of the ways of helping seniors, among others, stay connected in these difficult times of COVID. I just will throw out here for anybody out there who still may be listening, one of the issues that's been a perennial challenge is to, while we have so many interesting programmatic pieces for seniors in our community, they can't participate if they can't enable get through on the Wi-Fi in some way. They don't all have the computer expertise, and even with folks ready to help with that, we need access to Wi-Fi. That could be hotspots, that could be different ways. So anybody who may have access to that kind of resource in a way that might be beneficial, I'm happy to be a go-between to you and the people who are working on it closely. And certainly you can contact directly the staff in Montclair at the Township building. Another piece that others have made reference to, and some of the callers, at least one person mentioned the Pressman interns, and at least one of the callers was one of them. Pressman interns was a program last summer initiated, I guess, in the spring by a few houses of worship, including mine, to help out all these young people, sort of high school and college aged, whose summer experiences were not going to go forward because of COVID. And so the adults from a few places kind of pulled themselves together, and I was initially part of that group, helping them to form their own positive experiences. And some of them took on policing issues, and some of them took on environment, and some of those young people actually helped deal with some of our own parks, and they'd spoken to the Parks Commission on a night that I was there. So I just want to really acknowledge those people who are still living out their passion. I think there are a lot of challenges. We've talked about a little bit of it tonight. I think the budget itself doesn't readily lend itself to as much discretion as we might want. But nonetheless, I think advocating for and trying to make clear your views is really very much part of our democratic process. And I commend and encourage folks to continue to do that. And maybe we can find some pathways forward that actually represent the best of what we can collectively think. Lastly, I just want to also acknowledge Martin Luther King Day. It wasn't the kind of observance that many of us would have liked to better roll up our sleeves and go do some good work and have that day on. But I know that there were many different initiatives out there of folks dropping off needed goods and things like that. And I know in particular Tony's Kitchen was one of them, and there are many others, I'm sure. So I want to thank those who took part in those and who continue to be good to their neighbors, and that we are a community for each other. But I also just wanted to mention one other program that was brought to my attention. I did watch last night, and I just put it on the record here. A friend of a friend is named Ruth Feldstein. She had written a book called How It Feels to Be Free. And so on PBS, Masterpiece had published and created a documentary about this, really about Black women and how they've come into their own voice and their own empowerment. It aired last night at 9, but I'm sure in the way of PBS, it will be airing again. And so I commend that to anybody who can go find it to watch. It's really beautiful, and that was part of how I helped observe yesterday. So anyway, looking forward to working on new things together in the coming year, and certainly helping to implement the rent control, all the pieces that need to come together to make that a reality. So thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Second Ward Councilwoman, Councilor Schlager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your state of the town earlier this evening. It was very informative, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know if many people know, but when Dr. King was here in Montclair, he visited Montclair High School, and on the first floor of the high school, in the music room where he visited, on the floor there are golden feet that are cemented into the floor from the spot that he stood in, and it's very moving to see that. There's also a large photo, a real photo from when he was here, framed on the wall. So if anyone has the chance to be at the high school You should go take a look at that. It's really quite something to see, and how rare that he got to come to our high school in our town. As reported, many of you might have heard of the tragic car accident that occurred this past Friday afternoon on the corner of Wendover Road and Valley Road, where a woman was tragically killed while she was walking her dog. Her name is Mrs. Maria Dolores Ascenzo, and she was the mother of the Horner family that lives in our town. And it was really tragic, and my heart goes out to the Horner family as they grieve through this terrible time. Mrs. Ascenzo is visiting from New York. She was walking the dog, and it's really tragedy for all. But I got to see firsthand that afternoon our Montclair Police Department, our fire department, the Montclair Ambulance Corps, all those first responders that we hear, and I got to witness their heroics that they did, and it was quite something. But most of all, I have to commend them on their sensitivity during that tender time. It was tough for everybody, and they were professional, and just I was overwhelmed and blown away by all of them. So my hats off to them all. And like I said, please keep the Horner family in your prayers and thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, our Deputy Mayor Hurlock.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of things to touch upon. I too had the pleasure of attending the MNDC event last evening virtually, which was very well done. I also want to just give a shout out to Councilman Cummings. I thought did a very nice presentation, was very informative, a lot of history and a lot of connections there that are very, very meaningful to the town. We also continue to work and meet with the business leaders throughout the pandemic. We've been doing that. We will continue to do that. We've been having our conference calls to see what we can do as a town to going forward, and we will continue to do that as well. Much like many of my colleagues, I too missed the annual breakfast that we've all have been attending every January for Dr. King's celebrating the life of Dr. King, and look forward to hopefully returning to that next year when hopefully most of this pandemic is behind us. And just reminding everyone again, please continue to adhere to the social distancing, wearing your masks. While the vaccine has started to come out and we're doing well with that, we still have a long ways to go, and keep also just adhering to the protocols so that we can hopefully put this behind us once and for all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Appreciate that. I certainly want to echo all my colleagues' comments that have been made before. I want to thank so many people for really their day of service and day of action on Monday. It I think really spoke to the engagement that so many in this community and beyond really have, and I think I want to applaud everybody for finding something to engage in, to help make the community better, to help someone else in need, to help right a wrong, to help carry on Dr. King's legacy. So a big thank you there. I just want to simply take the moment to mention that be putting out information that next Wednesday, that's next Wednesday, the 27th, I will be doing the next town hall. I will have Dr. Chris Purnell. She is the Chief Strategic Integration and Health Equity Officer at University Hospital. You've probably seen her on TV a number of times with her journey around COVID-19 and, of course, her efforts around the vaccine. So as it was noted, I think, by many before, it is imperative that we ensure and encourage everyone to get the vaccine to show that it is safe. She will help me have a conversation, certainly around the natural distrust that exists, particularly in communities of color, but why it is so important for us to get the vaccine, why it is safe, how it has been tested, et cetera. So we'll engage in a community conversation to use all our voices, use certainly my voice to help get the message out there that the vaccine is safe. It's important for all of us to take it. And as our deputy mayor said, we engage in safe practices until we get to that place where we can put this pandemic behind us. So please mark calendars and tune in for that. With that, I want to thank all of my colleagues for today's meeting and all of their comments, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great night. Bye, everyone.
Night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.